Hi, everybody. I'm Joyce Walsh, and today we're going to have a brief introduction to the Photoshop workspace, and then we'll start developing your professional Adobe software skills. So we're going to learn the essential Lasso tool, very powerful, flexible tool in Photoshop, and we'll also learn how to manually adjust exposure of your images. So let's get started. Here we are in the Photoshop workspace. Three things I want to point out initially. The main menu runs along the very top of your desktop or laptop screen. Then we access tools using the toolbar or toolbox. Those words are used interchangeably, and you can move the toolbox closer to your work as you see fit. And we are going to explore the layers panel, which is so helpful in editing multi-layer images in Photoshop. Okay, everybody should go to the Bloomsbury Graphic Design Essentials resources page and download convertible.jpg and archie.jpg. Just drag those to your desktops and then come back. Okay, we're back and we're in Photoshop, and we will say File, Open. And from our desktops, we'll click on Convertible and Archie and press Open. Okay, there's Archie, he's my old dog, and we're going to get started right away. We have a lot to do this morning. So we want to select this image and copy him into the convertible file. So Command A is a keyboard shortcut, short for select all. Command A, can you see those little dashes? So it's selected the entire image. Press Command C to copy it, and then click on the tab that says convertible, and then press Command V to paste. Command V as in Victor. Okay, so notice our layers panel now. We have a background layer, the car image, and we have layer one, the Archie. And I want to point out how you can toggle on and off the visibility of these layers. So if you click on that little eye icon, you will be able to have that layer visible. Now, if we wanted to work on the car layer, we would have to click on the background layer, okay? If we want to work on the Archie layer, which is what we do want to do, we have to click on layer one. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is select Archie's cute head with the lasso tool. So this is the lasso tool, and the primary version of the tool we will use is this top version. If you hold your mouse over the lasso tool, you can see there are three variations of this tool. The second one is also helpful, and we'll use that in just a few minutes, and that selects straight edge shapes. Say, for example, the skyline of a city. Now, the magnetic lasso tool is thought to be a shortcut to these selections, but I would recommend you develop your skills in these two so that you have the best professional level results. So let's take this lasso tool. We'll click by his ear, hold the mouse key down, and drag all around the outside of his figure. Now, don't stress about this being a perfect selection today. As you can see, mine isn't quite perfect either. I always have to remind myself to breathe when I'm doing this, especially halfway through. So the mouse button stays down, and you've got to get up to that beginning point. Forget to breathe. We got it. All right, so this is called a selection. And now we are going to copy Archie, Command C, and then paste him, Command V. And notice in our layers panel, now we have three layers. So pretty much every time you copy something in Photoshop, you're going to get a new layer. So I'm going to toggle off the visibility of that original Archie non-silhouetted image, and I'll work in layer two, okay? And we can still see our background layer behind. So for those of you who are perfectionists out there and you see these little edges, one of the things you could do is change the options for the lasso tool, increase the feathering edge. I would say in 90% of the times that I use the lasso tool, which is frequently, I don't have a feathered edge. But in the case of a furry dog, you might want to increase the feathered edge, and it doesn't take much. All right, so let's zoom in a little bit and clean this up ever so slightly. I don't want you to stress about it being a perfect selection, but I do want you to know about this variation of the tool, and especially the options bar. So every time you select a different tool, your options will change. Okay, so we changed lasso, feather, 1 pixel. And I'll show you a quick way to clean up this ear where you see those white outlines. Those are kind of telltale um, cleanup needs in Photoshop. So I always just take subsets of the image and just press select it and then press delete. And you can take this zoom tool, it looks like a magnifying glass at the bottom of your toolbar, and also keyboard shortcut Command minus and Command plus help you zoom in and out. So if we wanted to clean up a little bit of this, we're not going to shoot for perfection today. This is our very first work with the lasso tool, our very first software skill. Okay. And I'll do a little bit on this side because it will drive me crazy otherwise. So this is zoomed way in. So I'm again trying to control my perfectionist tendencies apparently. All right, so this gives you an idea of what we would do. And now I'm going to get back up to Command minus and make sure I remember to change the feather back to 0, okay, for our next step. Okay, now I'm really interested in scaling Archie and putting him in the driver's seat. He loved to ride in the car with his head hanging out over the door. Okay, so I want to scale him, and the way I want you to be aware that you can scale is this edit, transform, scale menu. And the reason for this is I wanted you to be aware of these several capabilities of the software and where to find them quickly under the edit, transform menu, okay? Everything in this menu I use on a regular basis for Photoshop. So here's scale. And we're going to drag a corner control point towards the center. And then I can reposition the mouse into the center and make sure he gets, oops, into the car. That's a little bit too big. And there's his chin's going to hang out over the car. Let me zoom in a little bit more. There we go. And now I'm going to choose, I would like to change the opacity here. And this is in the layers panel. And what it is going to temporarily let me see the top of the door, okay? And I would recommend you do that too. And if you need to reposition Archie, take the move tool, okay? That looks pretty good. All right, so first I'm going to select around his beard and then drag to the right, swoop around, and then press delete, okay? And then I want to come in with the variation of the lasso tool, the second one, the polygonal lasso tool. And now I might even zoom in a little bit more because I want this to look as realistic as possible, right? So I'm going to click up at the window, click down a little bit. And so for this straight edge selection, I just have to click, take my finger off the mouse, move it, and I can very quickly make a straight edge selection. And once I'm happy with that, I'll press the delete key again, and then press Command D to deselect. And let's bring the opacity back up and press Command minus. And I think he's looking pretty good. The last thing I want to comment on is the exposure. So once you get more and more experienced in working with photographs in Photoshop, you'll start to see exposure differences if you're doing a composite image. So the car exposure is a little bit darker than the dog exposure. So we can actually change that pretty easily when we know how to do it, right? That's the trick. So under the image menu, go to adjustments. And my favorite way to adjust exposure is manually in this curves window. And once you know how it works, I think you'll see it is very intuitive. So if you see this chart, you have the blacks here in the lower left and the white values on the right and on the top. So if we want to reduce the white values, we can drag down here. If we have dark values, we can drag in the lower left-hand quadrant, right? And I think we need to just increase here a little bit. Yeah, that's a good match. Okay, and then once you're happy, it's usually just a very subtle change. Press OK. And then the next thing I want to do is save this. So in your internships and jobs, you will most likely work on Photoshop files that have multiple layers, and you need to save that as a Photoshop file in order to preserve those layers and be able to make additional edits, which happens when you're dealing with clients. So let's say File Save As. And then I always use very descriptive names because you'll be surprised how fast your files accumulate in number. So Archie in convertible is my file name. I'm saving it as the topmost format, the Photoshop format, so that the layers are preserved. Press save. And okay, now if we wanted a compressed version, meaning no layers and a much smaller file size, the most common way to do that, and we'll talk more about this in later videos, is the JPEG for photographs, okay? So JPEGs will compress into one layer and make the file size smaller. Now you will always be prompted for the JPEG options, and we are most concerned about the quality. So 7 is actually a pretty low quality. Notice the file size is going to be listed here, 551K. Drag that up to maximum, and we have a quality number of 12. And now our file size is 5 times the original file size. But we're not going to have to load this onto a website. So for now, we're going to go with maximum quality and save that JPEG. Now, where did my JPEG file go? We just saved as, remember? So in order to see that JPEG in Photoshop, you have to press File, Open, and open it. And now, sure enough, there we have only one layer. All the layers are compressed onto one. Good work for today, and I'll see you again.